now that the IEBC has been reconstituted.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that?
Finally.
Yes,
it has a lot of it has its work cut out for him.
Kabisa mtu wangu wa power.
Sio.
Intro yao imejaa.
Lots of by-elections.
Your design for
boundaries.
Lazima constitution ina indicate that every so often one of could reconsider our boundaries. Maybe kuamua hii ni kubwa sana tukate ama hii ni ndogo sana tupanue na vitu kama vile mtu wangu wa power.
So IEBC has been reconstituted.
Correct.
And the president assented to the bill.
Yes.
It's gazetted.
Correct.
It's official.
And they were sworn in.
And the
commissioners were sworn in.
Yes.
So there is no more reason to delay any business that pertains elections. Preparations for 2027 elections. Yeah.
Albeit amidst a lot of noise from political pundits who indicated that the president did not fully uphold the law when it comes to the constitution of this particular commission.
Correct. That's correct. You remember just before there were two gazettements that were issued. Initially, when the select panel submitted the names to the president, there is a group that went to court. And when they went to court, they did obtain orders stopping any gazettement or swearing in, even though the court did say that the process of selecting can go on as the case is entertained. But interestingly, as soon as the names were submitted, before waiting for the verdict of the court, the president did gazette that now these people should proceed to be sworn in. And that and I think now the swearing in could not take place because the person who does the swearing in is the Chief Justice and the Registrar of the Judiciary.
But Wakili, why the rush?
You know, in Kenya, when things are done that way, it's not by accident. When someone does things that way, it's not by accident. So I will definitely read a lot of malice, especially a person in the stature of the president, who has a legal team and he himself has gone to school. He understands the constitution and understands the effect of a court order. So for me, I would simply say that that decision to rush their gazettement before the court had concluded the process was in bad faith. That is all I can say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And where do we go from here?
Now from here, there are several things. As Kenyans are saying, the in-tray of the IEBC commissioners is so full. But there are certain serious and fundamental issues that needs to be dealt with.
Such
Number
as?
one, we've got pending by-elections in more than, I think, 15 for MCAs, more than six for MPs, and
one
for Senate.
Yeah.
So more than 21 by-elections are pending. So that is one of the things that the IEBC needs to start planning for, because it is urgent in the sense that the people in these constituencies, the people in these electoral units, they deserve representation ASAP. Remember, they have been staying without representation for all this time.
Right.
So that is one of the issues that IEBC needs to start looking at very urgently. Number two, there is the issue of delimitation of electoral boundaries. Pursuant to Article 89 of the Constitution, this process ought to have been conducted between 8 and 12 years upon promulgation of the new Constitution. So if it were to be done at the earliest instance, 8 years from 2010, that must have been in 2018. But they had the leeway all the way to around, I think, 2022, 2024.
And then
that still didn't happen.
And then COVID hit.
Then COVID hit, and so many other reasons that were beyond our, comprehension. So most importantly, delimitation has to happen, and it has to happen as now, because the Constitution has couched that requirement in very mandatory terms. That delimitation must happen between 8 years and 12 years, and there is no way about it. So they have to sit down and start that process ASAP. And if it is funding, they need to ask for enough funds from the relevant institution so that that process can kick off.
The only problem with our commission is that the funds they're asking for is not to do what the Constitution mandates them to do, but rather to relocate their offices from the CBD to Ruaka.
That is the bizarre, Igunza, because we've got much more important things, and yet people are asking for things which do not matter at this particular moment. In fact, for me, virtual offices can work. We have seen virtual offices work. So buildings is not a measure for competence and efficiency. Where they are right now, they can still work. They need to start restoring the confidence of the public to IEBC. You know, many a times we've heard politicians and reckless, mouths saying that from certain quarters, if certain individuals do not win elections, they are going to top up. You see, that casting aspersion on the part of IEBC needs to be condemned very seriously. And IEBC, now that the commissioners are in place, they need to start restoring the confidence, the public confidence. They need to enforce the electoral code of conduct. They need to charge people for electoral offenses because the laws are there, so that they can start rebuilding the trust of Kenyans onto IEBC.
They also need to
Number 3, and also very importantly, they need to start planning for voter registration and cleaning up the voters, voters registration. They need now to allow the young people to start registering as voters and bringing them up to speed. If there are processes of procurement, they need to start now, because 2027, much as we have 2 years, that is a very short period to organize for these huge elections.
And they say that every so often we must always do away with previous like a software that manages the electoral process. So that means the one that was used in the previous election
cannot be used
right now,
because it's susceptible to being tampered with. It could also, there are so many malpractices that can arise out of it. So everything needs to be procured afresh, so that there is that public trust, there is that public goodwill that needs to be restored.
And apart from like registering new voters, when we talk about cleaning up the voter registry, what exactly are we talking about for purposes of those who might not be familiar with this process?
Basically, the process of cleaning up the voters registry is taking away the voters who have now been declared dead, because between 2022 and 2027 there are people who have died, and unfortunately people die. So cleaning up the register means taking those people who are no longer in existence out of the voters register and allowing the people who have now come of age and eligible voters to be introduced into the voters register.
We had just the other day a woman rep, if I'm not mistaken, who indicated that even if they're not going to vote you in, tutakuibia. So isn't that starting from a very wrong footing?
You see, those are the unfortunate statements that come at a time when the issue of voter registration, the issue of elections in Kenya are very emotive, and in order to ensure that the temperatures are cooled down, IEBC must at all times strive to ensure that they restore that public good. And they even have the laws and mechanisms of ensuring that people who try to raise emotions, people who want to make the issue of elections in Kenya more emotive, IEBC has the mechanism of even prosecuting them. So by now, the commissioner ought to have reprimanded that lady, who is a woman rep, so that she comes and clarifies to IEBC how they are going to steal the election. Because already, if such kind of reckless statements are flying without being checked, that is how public confidence and goodwill is eroded insofar as the trust that Kenyans have towards this IEBC is concerned. Because you can imagine if that statement goes unchecked, and then later on actually such an unfortunate incident happens where people are saying it appears so and so has lost an election, but people are trying to top up for him or her. Definitely it will mean IEBC is no longer independent, as its prefix is stated to be.
Okay, how about the NCIC? Are you working together with them, because they also have their work cut out for them?
Yes, the Cohesion Commission, they also have their work cut out for them. But unfortunately, some of these institutions, Jeff, they have the tools, but they don't bite. NCIC, you also have something like IPOA. They have the tools, but they don't bite. IPOA and NCIC, they're like toothless dogs. Never have we seen them prosecuting people or pursuing these grievances seriously to their logical conclusion.
Does the system need a complete overhaul?
not even system, but that goodwill from the people who have been put in charge. Because you can't tell me, Jeff, that we need to legislate, we need to do an overhaul on the structures that we have. No, there has to be public goodwill, that if you've been given a mandate and you're sitting in an office, be competent. Do not allow to be compromised, because many a times people are not prosecuted, or we see a lot of malpractices or inefficiency because of being compromised and in deliberate incompetence. So those are the things that people need. When you are given a task to serve in a particular position, you need to be competent, you need to be beyond reproach, you need to do your job. Otherwise, we can't say that we need an overhaul of the structures. The structures we have are enough, and they are good and they can work. In fact, we can work even without structures. All we need is to apply the rule of reason. Common sense.
If we go back to when Maraga and his team actually overturned the election,
correct,
a while back,
yes,
that was unheard of.
Yes,
in a lot of jurisdictions. I think we made headlines all over the world. But how many times have we seen that? Yes. When we began this discussion, you indicated that already we started on the wrong footing because the president was acting against the law.
Yes.
Yet,
yes,
the High Court just the other day went ahead and maybe gave a nod to that.
Yeah.
And they indicated, if I may quote them, to uphold the rule of law and the legitimacy of the IEBC, and illegality cannot be the foundation of legitimacy.
Correct. We have the laws that can work. What is required is goodwill and people to be diligent. You can see Maraga, he was able to overturn elections, which is unheard of, with the laws that we have. The laws that he was using at that time have never been changed. Now in 2013, the Supreme Court that was being led by Mutunga, you saw them giving a blank check to individuals who had a case at the ICC, setting a very bad precedent. Today, everybody will always cite that case, that, you know what, Uhuru and Ruto at that time were facing cases at the ICC, but they were allowed to run. So for me, you cannot say that I can't run even if I have a case in court. You have to allow me to run. So you see, it is also the goodwill of individuals holding these offices that will progress Kenya. If we have individuals holding these offices without any goodwill, without applying, common sense, we are bound for very bad times. We are bound for very bad precedents, which will not progress this country insofar as development of our country is concerned.
Wakili, common sense is not that common, huh?
Yeah. It's very rare. Very rare.
That's what they say.
Yeah. And so if the judiciary, the ones that we depend on to actually guide us on matters law, somehow or arguably can be compromised, what does the future hold for us?
Igunza, this issue of the judiciary, the perception, compromising the judiciary starts with perception. You don't even need to have real evidence. And you see, sorry to say, the judiciary as constituted now, led by the Chief Justice, started by, the Chief Justice is the president of the judiciary. But at some point, we kept on seeing her going to State House, lining and waiting for the president to clap for her, for the president. You see, that is the first perception that Kenyans started getting, that this judiciary seems to have been, emasculated. The judiciary, and just as we saw during Maraga's time, we used to see, never at any moment did I see Chief Justice Emeritus Maraga going to State House to line and clap for the president at that time. Anytime you will have an issue, he will communicate very formally, and if he does not receive any communication, he will come out in public glare and reprimand that things have to be done the right way. See, the thing is, in government, there are three separate arms of government, and the heads of these arms are not supposed to appear as if one of them is bending a knee to the other one, because that is the perception that now erodes the confidence. So if today, and the perception out there is that the judiciary has been emasculated by the executive, parliament is no longer even in existence, because we simply have robots who are told, do
this, do that,
do this. We have voting machines, and they are told, it's like a software. Once you click the button, they vote as they were. So parliament is not there. So the last line of defense, insofar as the rule of law, insofar as public matters are concerned for Kenyans, is concerned, the last line of defense is the judiciary. And the judiciary cannot afford to give that impression that it is emasculated, because the moment that happens, then people have no reason to trust any decision that they churn out. And most importantly, and this also has been evidenced in the sense that court orders are churned out and issued by the judiciary. If the orders are against the executive can decide to disobey. But if the orders are against the citizens, the executive and the government expects citizens to respect. So that's when they draw the line. So this inconsistency definitely distorts that public trust in the judiciary. And the judiciary needs to come out very strongly anytime there is disobedience of a court order. For example, this issue recently where the president goes and gazettes these people contrary to what the court has said, the judiciary needs to have come out very clearly and issued out a very strong statement, or even probably give reprimands on the executive that if we are starting this process in bad faith, how do you expect Kenyans to trust us? But so far the Chief Justice and the judiciary has not issued any statement on that disobedience of that court order. So that is the malice, that is the bad faith that we are speaking about.
It's very sad to see.
Very sad. Yeah.
Wakili, it's and with barely 2 years to go.
Yes.
Barely
it's a very short period.
Yes.
But if IEBC is serious, they can hack through, because sometimes you just need that goodwill, and you don't need a huge team. What we were saying is that the commissioners need to be in office. But then again, there is a counter argument to that. You remember when Professor Kithure Kindiki was being, cleared to be the deputy president, IEBC issued a certificate. So and sometimes we say if and they keep on saying that certain things cannot be undertaken because the commissioners were not there. But how is it possible for him to be given a clearance certificate for IEBC? So it is possible. This process of delimitation, the process of voter registration, and any other important activity that IEBC needs to undertake for purposes of preparation of the 2027 election was very possible because the secretariat is there.
Yeah.
If the secretariat is there to issue clearance certificate to Kithure Kindiki, it's possible for the secretariat to also commence the voter registration process.
And if I may quote your friend Barack
Luka.
Yeah. What is absent in this country is goodwill.
Correct.
From State House as the head,
yes,
right, and Parliament. It is easy to understand how State House slips and falls.
Yes.
The person at the very top is overwhelmed by round-the-clock phoning by everyone he encounters everywhere he goes. Nobody tells him the truth.
Correct.
Even the Attorney General, matters legal,
yes,
who should advise him on matters of the law, approaches him on her knees. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, because we have seen many members of parliament, instead of checking the president, instead of advising the president and offering wise counsel whenever he has veered off, his mandate, they have joined the praise and worship choir.
Precisely.
Instead of checking the president, for example, one of the most fundamental issues that pens before this court is the implementation of the two-thirds gender rule. That issue, even the Supreme Court during the Maraga's time did issue an advisory that parliament should be dissolved. No member of parliament, including the female member of parliament, who should be at the forefront of progressing this issue, because gender to some extent affects matters of the of the female members of parliament, because we have seen that in most compositions in our parliament, female members of parliament are few. So they have to ensure that that rule is progressed for the betterment of equality. But what have they done? Most of them have joined praise and worship, and they are always seen clapping for the executive, begging for development, and so on and so forth. So I agree with Barack Muluka 100%. The Attorney General, the current Attorney General, the public seal was moved from her office to the office of the head of civil service, and she has never said anything, no explanation whatsoever. And the government spokesperson was found, confusing himself, saying the government public seal with the head of public seal. Now it has been returned to the AG. This is total confusion. This happens because the executive has emasculated all these institutions. And it starts from the manner in which these people are appointed into these offices. MPs, most of them allied to the executive. The manner in which they came into place, we know. Most of these MPs have got a lot of skeletons. That's why they are afraid of telling the president right on his high. Because if they come out guns blazing and tell the president the truth, the next day most of them will find themselves in court taking plea. That's why they are afraid. You know, the Attorney General, we know the Attorney General is always at the whims of the president. The manner in which she's appointed, you know, even though she's supposed to be independent in offering counsel to the president, and that's why when we see her approaching the president while bending and kneeling, it comes from how she was appointed. So I'm not surprised, and I agree with Barack Muluka. We are going to see the recalls happening very soon, especially with IBC being put in place. We are going to witness that. Just before the last, just a few, few days and few months after the last year Gen Z protests, there was a lot of clamor for recall of some of these MPs and legislators that have joined the praise and worship. But that could not happen because the process of recalling starts with collection of signatures. Now, the person, the institution to validate those signatures is IBC. Now, IBC at that time, IBC, I believe that process will still happen, but for some weird reasons, the Secretariat always found a reason to say, IBC is dysfunctional because the commissioners aren't there. Remember, I told you that when the government of the day finds it convenient to use IBC with or without the commissioners in place, they will do it. And that's why they were able to secure a certificate for Kithure Kindiki without the commissioners. Yeah. But when we, the people, want to initiate a process that benefits us, for example, recalling MPs, voter registration, the secretariat that is there will tell you that the commissioners are not there.
Yeah.
That's when they draw the line.
Double standards.
In law, there's something called estoppel. Estoppel.
Yes.
When you act in a certain way, and you make people to believe to act in a certain way, you cannot be changing tune based on convenience. So estoppel here stops IBC with or without the commissioners to act for the progression of Kenyans. So even at that time, they were supposed to allow the initiation of the recall of the MPs, even though it has been, the intention of the MPs to frustrate any possibility of being recalled, because they have never enacted that law. The process of enacting that law, they have never even attempted it. But anyway, the Constitution is the Grundnorm. We don't even need that law. The Constitution has already said that you can enact you can recall these people. If it can be shown that someone has joined the praise and worship team, they are not oversighting the executive, they are not legislating. There are some MPs who have never spoken any word in parliament. In fact, we've had some of them saying that they have no business going to parliament. They're always looking for money out there. Those are the first people that are supposed to be recalled. And to recall them, you just need to show a justifiable cause. You don't even need any law. And that's why I keep on saying, Jeff, everything in this country can run very smoothly if we just apply common sense. Even if there is no law. Britain does not have any written constitution. But that country is running its affairs very well. It has an unwritten constitution. So even if there is no law, rules of common sense and reasonable standards can apply. If someone has been elected to go to parliament to legislate, he does not legislate, he does not attend parliament, and he can be overheard saying that his business is not to go to parliament but to look for money, that is a candidate ripe for recall. If an MP has been elected and he has joined the praise and worship team to praise and worship the president instead of checking and oversighting the president, that is a person who should be recalled. So I will not be surprised very soon to see the young people or Kenyans of goodwill initiating the process of recalling. And that's why the MPs, if you speak with them from their close circles, they were so much opposed to the reconstitution of IBC, because they know the moment IBC is in place, the next course of action is recall of most of them, particularly those ones who have joined praise and worship. The GenZs, you need to keep on. The moment is now that IBC has been reconstituted.
Yeah.
This is your moment to now actualize what you've been pushing for. Number one, voter registration must commence in earnest. Number 2, the recall of MPs and legislators who have joined the praise and worship should commence ASAP, because these are the people who have failed to ensure that our systems work. They're actually the ones blocking our systems from working. The laws, the framework that we have in Kenya can work very perfectly, but they're the ones who are impeding any progression. They have joined the praise and worship instead of legislating in ensuring that money trickles down from the national government to counties, because in this country the concept of devolution is the only hope for Kenyans. Money has to be decentralized. The MPs, many a times, they are always blocking, trickle down of revenue from national government to counties. So GenZs must start now to actualize their plans.